Welcome to Moss Park TV. In today's segment, we're joined by Gaetan Heroux, a founding member of the 230 Fight Back group and a tireless advocate for housing justice in downtown Toronto. Gaetan has been speaking out about a crucial issue that lies at the center of the city's housing crisis: the vacant lot at 214-230 Sherbourne Street. Gaetan, alongside other members of the Fight Back 230 group, is calling for this property to be transformed into social housing that can help meet the city's dire need for affordable homes. Gaetan's advocacy is shining a light on this missed opportunity. But he's not just speaking up for the cause, he's also inviting you to take action. This brings us to the upcoming People's Assembly, a gathering where tenants and community members will come together to demand action and accountability from the city. This assembly is crucial for anyone who believes in the need for change in how we approach housing in downtown Toronto. Gaetan will share more about the assembly's goals and how it's a chance for the community to unite and push for the development of the affordable housing at 214-230 Sherbourne. In this new interview, Gaetan will give us a deeper look at why this vacant land is such a crucial issue and why the People's Assembly is the next step in fighting for housing justice in our city. Now let's hear more from Gaetan himself about the fight for housing justice.
My name is Gaetan Heroux. I'm a member of 230 Fight Back, and I've actually been organizing in the Dundas and Sherbourne area since the late 1980s. In particular, we've been organizing intensely in the last 2.5 years around 214, 230 Sherbourne, which is a vacant lot and a boarded up Victorian rooming house. And a lot has happened, but since we last talked, the main thing that's happened is the planner in the city has approved KingSett Capital's application to build a 46-story condo tower on the property, with a small amendment or an amendment from Chris Morris that basically says that the city should continue to have discussion to negotiate with KingSett either to buy or maybe to build some quote unquote small number of affordable housing on the site. And our position is still that Dundas and Sherbourne does not need another condo. There's enough condo development along the Dundas corridor right now, going all the way back, all the way from Church, all the way to Regent Park, actually. So that's continues to be our position. What's going on right now is that the whole pre-construction condo sales has crashed, which means that KingSett Capital will not be selling their property or building anything soon in the near future, because in order for them to begin construction, they have to sell 70% of the condos. And right now, like I said, the whole pre-condo construction is dead. So we're looking at several years down the road, if it happens at all. So we continue to push and to protest and to go after KingSett to say that the condo is not wanted and we want you to build it there. Now, in the meantime, what we've been doing is we've been organizing with other grassroots organizations in various communities across the downtown core. And on April 25th and 26th, we're planning a People's Assembly on housing justice. And a whole bunch of people will be gathering on those 2 days to talk about what's happening in their neighborhoods. And we're going to have people who are migrants, asylum seekers, unhoused people. We're going to have low-income people from Parkdale, from Dundas and Sherbourne, from Chinatown. So a whole bunch of organizations have been involved in organizing this event, and part of the focus is looking at the kind of work that each organization is doing, like no eviction and all that kind of stuff, but also to really focus on the financialization of housing. So on the Friday night, we have 4 speakers coming. John Clark, Waleed, Kira, and Lorraine Lamb, who are going to be speaking on that issue. And then the next day, we're going to have a whole bunch of speakers and workshops. So we're really looking forward to bring people together. And out of that conference, we're hoping to have that people will endorse a mass demonstration for June 14th that will start at 214, 230 Sherbourne and march on several big developers that are on Bay Street, such as Dream Unlimited, Caprit, Kingset Capital, and also going to focus on Create TO, which is the city's main organization that deals with all the developers to build housing in Toronto, and to send a message to the city that public money, public land should be for people, not for private profits. That's where we're at right now. The issue around the housing crisis is one of many issues going on around the world right now. And just a quick note on what's been happening in Europe around the whole housing crisis. They've had so for Spain just on the weekend had several thousand people march on the streets around the housing crisis. It's quite something to look at when you look it up. So that's going on. But alongside this housing crisis is all this uncertainty in terms of the world, whether it's what's going on in Ukraine or in Gaza, or around the world, what's going on in the U.S. right now, particularly around the tariffs, the fear that large unemployment will occur, not just in Canada but around the world, and what that could lead to. People are really scared around the idea of a third world war, because things are not going well. They're talking about recessions now, and I've been through some recessions. I'm 70 years old right now, and they're not pretty, because a lot of people will lose their work during recessions. So part of what we want to do is to organize locally to talk about these issues, particularly around the housing, but to begin to make links. So for instance, with migrants, who also it's a housing issue, but for migrants it's also much larger than that, right? In terms of moving around, trying to find work, and that kind of stuff. So similarly with asylum seekers, because of the chaos in the world right now, we're having a lot of people who are having to leave their country because of war, because of a whole bunch of reasons. So the idea is to begin to locally link these groups who are working around housing, and to look at a little bit of the broader issue, but using housing as the format that we want to use. And there's other issues, such as the privatization of healthcare is a huge issue. Education, how expensive education. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on right now that when I came in, to Dundas and Sherbourne in the late 1980s, 1988, and we've gone through some stuff, but I have to admit that this is some of the scariest times that I've seen in terms of Dundas and Sherbourne, and also tied to this is the whole issue of the climate justice. There's a group, Climate Justice Toronto, that's going to be speaking. So we have to begin to make those links in terms of how it affects low-income people, right? In terms of how it affects a class, right? A class of people, and to begin to talk to each other. How are we going to mobilize and organize around that? And I remember when we first formed 235 back, in the fall of 2022, the focus was on 214, 230 all along, but also with the idea to look at this whole issue, what is happening in poor neighborhoods particularly around, financialization of housing, the displacement of people, the explosion of homelessness in the city these days, where I think the last number I saw was close to 12,000 people in the shelter system. All of that is going on, and and we're hoping that this conference will begin, to bring people together to form a kind of movement that will begin to address particularly the housing issue, but begin to look, how do we, as low-income people, as a certain class, how do we begin to address and fight back against these austerity measures? Because what will come with the with the tariffs is we're going to get austerity, and the government is going to have spent a lot of money, but also they're going to have to cut programs down the road, right? I'm seeing, I come to the center here sometimes, and I just met a woman who had a tutoring program and not able to get the funding. So this is the kind of stuff we're going to start to see, and without talking to each other, we won't know exactly what's going on. So the more we talk to each other, the more we understand what's going on in our community. And I have to admit, over the last 2.5 years, I've gone to many of these organizations meeting, whether it's Northern Eviction or the Housing Justice, Park to Housing Justice, talked with some people in Chinatown, met with a group called the Toronto Underhouse and Homeless Union. Also through this process, met Wallet, who's part of the Regent Park Neighborhood Association, and we've begun to try and say, okay, let's get together here, let's talk about what's going on in our communities. On the 25th and 26th, we're having this event around the housing justice, which is a couple of days before the actual election. And obviously, the election, is important in terms of Dundas and Sherbourne and the downtown east, because we've been neglected for a long time. There's a lot going on here, so, but rather than talking about each of the party's plans, which I've looked a little bit and everything, they're all promising some kind of version of housing, some of it like for people to buy houses, some of it will be affordable. But really for us, in order, if we're going to get any kind of results from any of these parties, whoever wins, whether it's the NDP, whether it's the Federal, the Liberals, or the Conservatives, historically, the only way that we can get these politicians to move is by building a strong movement on the ground that they have to listen to. It's the only way. History has shown us that during the Great Depression, there were thousands and thousands of people who were in relief, who would demonstrate, take to the streets, and at that time there's no health care, there's no unemployment, all that kind of stuff, and eventually after the Second War they won all of that. Like we have unemployment insurance right now, we have health care right now, we had a huge housing program for decades because of those fights. So unless we can create a movement like we see in Europe, I just mentioned Europe before, thousands, tens of thousands of people are taking to the streets in Europe, in Spain particularly, Portugal, and other locations. So for us, the concentration has to be on creating this movement. Some people want to put a lot of energy into electoral politics, which I'm not going to stop them from doing that. But the best way to deal with that is to ensure that on the ground we have a situation where politicians can't ignore you, right? So and right now we had a snap election, right? So for the next another 2-3 weeks, they're going to be going everywhere, whatever. But then they disappear. Right, for 4 years, we just had an election in Ontario, the same thing, and we have no indication at all in terms of for instance, the Ontario government dealing with the issues that we have to deal with. Worse, actually, they're the ones who cut back killed the funding for the safe consumption sites. We have shelters that are overflowing every night in the city, like tonight, and 200 to 300 people being turned away every night. None of that is getting addressed. And how do I say this? I just ran into a woman today that I went to Queen West, and the reception there has been there for 25 years. She knows me. And I showed her the poster. And the first thing she said to me was, I'm a senior and I can't retire because I don't have money for the housing. I have to keep working. And that's a common thread around seniors. And I know that youth are struggling around the whole issue of housing. And definitely, even people who are working on minimum wage, and definitely people who are on welfare and ODSP. And for the people I organized with, over the last 30 years, there's just no housing for people. When the Palace Arms shuts down, I think they would have 60 men in there, usually men, and they'll be unable to find a space. The rooms are just not there. So, and this is a situation that has been was really, since COVID made, you really saw what was going on in the old age homes. But right now, as you said, just in terms of what's going on worldwide, in terms of the U.S., it's pretty scary times. But in the end, the people that we organize with us, we have no choice but to organize and mobilize. Because if we don't do that, everything is threatened. Everything is threatened. Whether it's your employment insurance, whether it's your health care, your housing. I remember. Sometimes I thought, about in 2010, I lost my job. I was fired, but I was able to get unemployment insurance, and my wife got sick, got cancer, and but we have health care. Had that not been there, we would be on the streets. There's no way we could have survived that. And I don't know, in terms for young people, I want to try and emphasize that infrastructure that was created after the Second World War is under threat right now, not just in Canada, but around the world, right? So I think for young people, they have to understand that we can't go back to a time where everything is privatized and you don't have access to healthcare. You don't have access to housing like now. Everything is so we have to create a movement where we say that we know the kind of city that we want, right? We want a city that we can live in, where we have safe housing, we have good work, we have transportation, we have daycare, we have good education. I mean, those are the basics. If you don't have that kind of stuff, then we're going to run into a real problem. And we are running into a problem. On April 25th and 26th, there's a 2-day event that we're calling the People's Assembly on Housing Justice. And it's a group of about 14 to 15 grassroots organizations that got together in the new year to talk about what was going on in their communities. And to also to try and figure out, how do we work together? And so how do we support each other? And so the idea on the 25th and 26th is to come together to talk about the work we're doing, to figure out how we're going to support each other, to try and build a movement that will address the issue of the displacement of people in our communities and the lack of housing for people that are living in our communities. And part of that is talking with each other. It's bringing people together. It's also talking about where did this crisis where did it come from? To begin having a discussion about what role does Bay Street play in this whole process of the fact that we can't find housing in our communities. So talk about that. What role does the city play with the developers? So begin to have those discussions, because we don't often have those discussions. Often, I'll end with this. Often, what happens is we're totally isolated, whether it's as individuals or whether as a small grassroots organization, we're isolated. The best thing that's happened to us, to 235 Back, is that we, over the last 2.5 years, have found these people who are fighting around the same issues that we're fighting around, and that begins to tear away at that isolation. And the minute we can do that, the minute we can begin to build a movement. And our hope is that out of that 25th, 26th conference or People's Assembly, we're going to we're going to leave with something that will help us move forward. And one of the things that we're going to bring to that assembly is a big march on June 14th, which will begin at 2:14, 2:30, and will march on Bay Street to the various developers that are causing this problem.
Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please follow us on all our social medias, and for more information, please visit our website.